You're listening to the Terrible Christian Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to the Terrible Christian Podcast. This is episode number 7, and back by popular demand, we have Samantha Lemon. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, well, kind of had to. You get a lot of views. It's probably because you're pretty. But, so we kind of had this impromptu idea to have this podcast today about something we feel can help a lot of people, but more importantly, it's helped us, and we kind of wanted to tell the story behind it. This episode's going to be focused on marriage, and we've been married, what now, babe? 6+ years, 6.5.
Right.
So why don't we talk about what we found as the most important aspect before we got married, which is what?
Marriage counseling was huge for us. It helped us set expectations for each other going into the marriage, knowing exactly what we were setting outline for each other. And that helped just because, growing up as a little girl, we get all these misconceptions through fairy tales and all this other stuff that we don't think plays a role in those things, but they do, as well as watching your parents.
Right. So expectations, though, marriage counseling, absolutely. I recommend that to anybody. But if you're not going to go the marriage counseling route, the thing that we relied upon the most was making sure that our values, our thoughts on money, on raising children, on just marriage roles and even gender roles, which is, triggering to this generation now, and this episode might trigger a lot of you, but it's reality. So we both came from situations where we left really toxic and manipulative and really bad relationships. So we were both in a spot where we weren't playing any games. We were not messing around. There was no sugarcoating stuff, almost annoyingly so. It was pretty aggressive on her part sometimes. But we wanted to know the truth. We wanted to not waste time. And we wanted to make sure that everything aligned with how we viewed the world, how we wanted a relationship to be from that point on. And if she didn't meet, the standards or have the same expectations as I had, and vice versa, if I didn't have what she was looking for and we didn't think alike and want the same things, then we knew down the road it was going to be an issue. So setting expectations was very, very important for us. Now, why don't you talk about the first time we talked on the phone? Because we met online at christianmingle.com, actually. Tell that story. I got to fix the camera.
Yeah, so this is actually a very funny story because neither of us were into online dating at all. Never dreamt we would ever even start online dating. And the fact that either of us joined was a miracle in itself, let alone later we found out through talking and dating that we had actually joined the same day. And when you join, it just starts kind of like a local search for people in your area. And we found out that we both expanded our search outside of that area the same day as well, which was just kind of coincidental. But from there, I didn't want to just talk to him online. I wanted to see the person he was presenting on there, if that was really who he was. So I wanted to make sure he was authentic, that his relationship with God was his priority in his life, And, right from the get-go, I was setting those expectations that I had of him and making sure that he was meeting them, because if not, I knew it wasn't going to go anywhere. And like he said, I didn't want to waste time anymore. I was done, just messing around, or people, I'd been through enough damage, and had finally rediscovered myself, my walk with God, and I wanted to reassure that he was aligned with those things as well in his life.
She says it so politely, so nicely. Okay, let me frame this a little bit different for y'all, since this is about truth. Ring, ring. Hello? What's your walk like with Jesus?
It wasn't that intense.
It's very strong right now. Okay, so what's going on with God in your life right now? I mean, it was like boom, 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 boom. She didn't even say hi, I don't think. It was more like, and go. And it went. And it was like, I mean, it was...
Well, online dating's scary. And I'd already spoken to a few people on the phone. And they were just not who they said they were at all. We won't go into that. It's a rabbit trail. But anyways, I was intense because I wanted to make sure he was who he said he was.
Yeah, and we won't dive into, too far into the rest of that, because it's more just a fun story for us. And it's a great story that you'll probably hear more of later on. But yes, the phone call went well, even though she was super hardcore. And
I knew what I wanted.
Yeah, and we had our first date, and the rest was history. We got married pretty quick, and part of that was because of expectations lining up. So you mentioned marriage counseling. We, again, our courting was very very short. So within two months or 3 months after knowing each other, we were already doing marriage counseling, because we had determined this is the person I want to be with. And we had done most of these expectation talks, and most of the, hardcore secret telling, and all the, baggage stuff. We just wanted it off the table. And it was different to have a relationship starting off that way, to where you just really, all right, this is me, this is who I am, love me or leave, kind of situation. But skipping ahead to marriage counseling, what was that experience like with me, you, and Pastor Jerry, which was your pastor growing up in your small church?
So surprisingly, it was very easy compared to what I thought it was going to be, because as Josh said, we kind of already had a lot of the discussions with expectations of, whether it was having how many kids, or what kind of lifestyle we were going to have, or the roles he would play as the man of the house, as my husband, as a father, just all these things. And the fact that we had already dove into each other's pasts and knew pretty much everything about each other. We weren't keeping any secrets. We knew we wanted each other to know everything. It made counseling that much easier, because when we went into it, the main thing with the counseling then for us was just making sure God was always at the center and priority of our marriage, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, well, and so marriage counseling, I'm sure a lot of you that have done it have done this part too, but usually there's, a test to see whether or not you line up on a lot of the values and a lot of the things. And she was living in Markleysburg, Pennsylvania at the time, and I was living in Reston, Virginia, which is just outside D.C. So we were 2.5 hours apart when we wrote these answers down to our test. And that weekend we had our counseling session with Pastor Jerry, and shout out to Pastor Jerry. We actually need to have him on the show and maybe do a part 2 to see, the importance of marriage counseling and having Jesus at the center of your marriage, and more so just to thank him, because he was a part of the beginning of our marriage story, our love story. So, but anyways, we gave our answers, and he was reviewing them, and he thought we cheated.
Our answers were that alike. I mean, it was shocking just hearing each other both read off our answers, and we're like, how did you know what I was gonna put? Pretty much like it, but it just reassures even that much more that God had put us together for a reason.
Yeah, we're talking like hardcore questions that typically are the basis of a lot of fights in marriage. For example, how do you view large financial decisions to be done? And we both put identical answers. It's not multiple choice, folks. It's write it out, right? And the answer was, on large financial decisions, we were going to discuss it, as a, team of married partners and decide, what we thought was best. But ultimately, those biggest decisions would fall on my shoulders, for better or worse. And it was scary to write that, but it was crazy to see that was like your answer. And that's just one. I mean, there was a ton. Our kids are waving to us through a window. We just shoved them outside and locked them up to a tree with some chains. And
did not.
Do not watch.
Did not.
Do not watch the parenting episodes, because we're terrible.
This one.
No. Pull his chain over the other one.
Jeez.
Yeah. Good. All right. Anyways.
Totally kidding.
Yeah.
I would never allow that.
Am I making you uncomfortable?
Yes.
Okay. There are no chains.
Hi, baby.
Anyways. All right. So yes, expectations were a big part, but we get married. And we find out, we're having Winslow. So there's, a lot of stress. But I felt like our marriage was a little bit unique in a lot of ways. Maybe not so unique when other people hear this. But the reality is, from the moment we met each other, we felt like we've been together our entire lives.
The way I've always described it is, before Josh and I met, I just had this restlessness in my heart, my soul. I can't really describe it any other way. And when I met him, it was just like, it was stilled, it was at peace, and he literally felt like home from the first time we met, and still is my home when we're together.
Yes, and she never wants to separate, even for a second. That's why we work together. No, we work really well together. Yes, we felt like we had known each other our entire lives. So it was a little bit different. And what I mean by that is, it wasn't like, they described the first year of marriage as like the honeymoon phase, where they call it the pink cloud in marriage and family therapy. The pink cloud is just everything's euphoric. You see things through the rosy lenses of love, and it was amazing, all this. But having a kid, and we went through some stressful things in year 2. But I would say that like year 1 wasn't like, every day has been great, right? I don't feel like it was this crazy euphoria. It was more like you were talking about, peace and home, and just finally like starting your life, rather than tricking our brains with emotions and hormones and whatever else. It felt like real love, and it always has. But like any marriage, circumstances in life and stress and many other factors that are outside of the marriage then can cause tension to the marriage. So year 2, I don't think it was so much, was it? It was more like 2.5 years in.
Right.
Yeah, that we then, from like 2.5 years to about 3 years, or maybe a little bit longer than that. So 2.5 to 3.5. We faced a tremendous amount of life stresses, big events, big life changes, and family issues, and all kinds of stuff that really put our marriage in a bad spot. because we were both individually in bad spots. We were also living in Ohio, where we did not have a good church. We couldn't find one. And if you want me to be completely honest, which this, thing is about, the churches were all super dead. And what I mean by that is, like, it felt like the Holy Spirit was not involved in the church at all. The people were like drones going in there. There was no emotion, no love, no fire for Jesus. And then the one church that had some fire was a prosperity, gospel type of church, which was not healthy. And so we just found ourselves without a church home. And that we feel that really, really led to a lot of our issues looking back. But marriage got bad. And why don't you tell everyone kind of where you were at, because there was a lot of stuff going on in your mind,
I mean, like you said, there was just a lot going on. We were just trying to survive, it felt like. And not getting our cups refilled at church made it even more stressful trying to deal with those things, because we didn't feel like we had as close of a relationship with God as we wanted. We were just getting these feel-good messages feel-good messages you can't take home and apply to your life during the week. And so it almost felt like a separation from God in a sense, our relationship with him, even though he was there and we knew that. And so just between that and you were working, it was like crazy hours a week. I barely saw you. So when you were home, you were exhausted and tired. I went back to nursing, which kind of was not at all in our plan. Even talking with our expectations with having a child, we wanted me to be at home with our little girl for as long as possible, battling even terrible preschool experience with her. And then me having separation anxiety because of that. I mean, there was just a lot going on. We both, I think, battled depression at different times.
Yeah, I was in like a kind of zombie-like depression state where I was just going through the motions. Like, I was just miserable all the time, but, I was tired all the time, like exhausted. So anytime I was around my wife and daughter, I wanted to sleep. Like, I just wanted to sleep. And she was very, very depressed. Because it was like a constant struggle for a year plus, and not having her partner, not having a partner in life really, because I wasn't there. And so that's what I was alluding to question wise, was your depression.
Yeah.
And I kind of forgot about mine, but it's true.
Yeah,
like,
we both battled it, and it made it extremely tough. I mean, trying to pull your partner out of depression or a depressed state is not easy. It's not fun, because you want to love them. I did not like seeing him like that, let alone when I was dealing with it. And I'd never really dealt with depression before that I recognized. So it was hard for me to recognize those things in myself even, and have the courage to come to you with it, because you don't want that to be true about yourself. You don't want to feel that way, and especially with your best friend. But because Josh and I are best friends, you made it that much easier to talk to you. And this goes back to our last episode, talking about opening up. It took me a while to open up about it.
Yeah. All right, pause there. Brad taught me that trick. All right. Sorry about that. Little interruption with the kids. All right, so let's get to brass tacks. That was our state of mind. But what were we doing to each other? Drag out nasty, horrible, vicious, mean fights. Constantly.
Right. And a lot of those came from feeling the way we were feeling because of how we were reacting to those things. We were taking out basically our feelings on the one closest to us, you, being my best friend and love of my life, I took it out on him. And I felt unloved by him, almost rejected by him, even though those things weren't true. He was, being worked to death, literally. The hours you were keeping were not healthy. You were getting very little sleep. So, as you said, when you were home, that's all he wanted to do. So we didn't really have, at the time, what felt like a relationship.
Mm-hmm. What changed it?
Well, something that dramatically affected our marriage, and I do seriously recommend this book. It is Love and Respect. And it pointed out a lot of things that I, as a wife, did not realize I was doing. I reacted to Josh when I felt unloved in ways that came across very disrespectful to him. And those were reactions to feeling unloved, unwanted, unworthy. All these lies us as women tell ourselves when certain things are said, but this book dives into even more than that, which is really important in any marriage or if you're thinking about getting married. So what it emphasizes on in the beginning, and I don't know if Josh can zoom this in a little bit when he does the video, but it is the crazy cycle. And that is exactly what was starting in our marriage, and it will continue to go round and round as long as you let it.
Well, and let's start with Love and Respect. The book itself is based off what? Ephesians 5?
Right. So God tells us the secret to a healthy marriage, a happy marriage, to ending that crazy cycle in Ephesians 5:33, where Paul writes, "Each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband." And that's NIV version.
Now, when you hear that, that's the triggering part, right? In the New Age feminism, respecting a man is supposed to be bad. Like, I don't know why. I think that even men, we grow up thinking that we need love, and we do need love. But love for us is shown in a different way, and not the way that we perceive to think it is. Like all those mushy feelings and all that stuff, for a man isn't where we feel our value and feel like we are loved. And that sounds counterintuitive because I'm saying we, but it basically, the Bible says to respect your husband and for husbands to love their wives. It doesn't say love your husband and husbands love your wives.
Right. And something funny they point out, it's by Dr. Emmerson, and something he points out in this as well is that those things don't come naturally to the opposite sex. Like, it doesn't come natural to me to respect, and it doesn't come natural to him to love. It's actually the opposite. Like, it's easier for him to respect someone and easier for me to love someone because that's how we are designed. So God putting that commandment in there deliberately is also teaching you something.
Yeah, and so this is also a tricky part about this little formula, is there's an order to it, unfortunately. And unfortunately, the order starts with the wife. Because what happens is when a wife, and we're not talking from the book, we're talking from experience. So this is what the book says, but at the same time, this is what happened in our marriage. But she read the book, and I had read it in the past, but she read the book, and it takes the wife starting to respect and tell her husband that she respects him before the natural reaction of the husband loving the wife the way that she wants to be loved. Like, it's something that as a husband, when you are feeling respected, you can't help but have these feelings for your wife where you just, want to love on her and be around her and talk to her and all that because I'm already starting to get teary because this is the crazy thing about it. So she read, I don't even think she made it all the way through because she felt the need to tell me that she respected me. And the first time she told me, I was like, okay. But then, it was like that scene in Good Will Hunting where, Will, it's not your fault. Okay, it's not your fault. Okay, it's not your fault. Okay, it's not your fault. Ah! And he starts crying, right? Well, she was doing that with, I respect you, right? And it probably took her 2 or 3 times in a conversation of her continuing to tell me that she respects me. And I'm like, at first I hear the word, I'm like, okay. And then I start thinking about it, and I don't know how or why, but like, oh my goodness, like I just broke down. I broke down. I didn't know that I needed to hear that. I didn't know, honestly, that I was being disrespected. I mean, there's a million examples. We still deal with this, but once I heard it, it like dropped me because I finally felt, I guess, love in the way of you respecting me. And so the natural occurrence was for me then to just shower her with love. Now, when she's talking about the crazy cycle, basically what happens, and we've been dealing with this the last couple of weeks where, we jump back in this stupid crazy cycle. I would say the biggest difference is with this book, it helps you recognize it quicker and you know how to snap out of it and really move back to a place of true partnership and true oneness. But the crazy cycle essentially is when she's feeling unloved, she lashes out in very disrespectful ways. And when a man feels disrespected, they tend to stonewall. And stonewalling is basically putting distance, between each other, whether emotionally, physically, whatever. It can come in the form of, spending more time at work or spending more time at hobbies and ignoring your wife or pretending to, or actually being tired and not wanting to help with the kids or whatever, and you start to get back at her by being very unloving through stonewalling. And then the more unloved she feels, the more she starts disrespecting you and bringing you down as a man, whether it's attacking the way you provide or don't provide, whether it's attacking things that mean a lot to you at the moment. I think in one of our recent fights, he even attacked the time I spent, on podcasting, and it was because she was feeling very unloved, things like that. And it creates this crazy cycle. And that's a hard thing to break out of, but the book does help you recognize it. And, once you've established the respect side of it, then later on in your relationship, it's easier for the man to go, oh, I'm being unloving because I feel disrespected. So how do you get out of that as a man? Well, it's pretty simple. You go, hey, remember that thing you said 10 minutes ago? That hurt me. I felt like you don't appreciate what I'm doing. And
I was just going to say, it's important with that, too, to recognize that your wife's not trying to deliberately disrespect you all the time. I'm not doing it to deliberately hurt you.
Half the time you didn't even know it,
right.
If not more than half.
So recognizing that something I'm doing or saying is disrespectful is very important too, and for him to know that I'm not doing it on purpose. And respect is difficult. I think it's the most difficult part of the process because the book even touches on this. We think of love as unconditional, where respect, we don't think of that as something that I can just give you unconditionally. We're trained to think in this world, you've got to earn it. But if that's what my husband needs most, then yes, I should respect you unconditionally, and you do deserve that. And if I love you the way I say I love you, then I want to show that in the way that speaks most to you, and that's maybe a way to view it. And as far as like what I say may not be deliberately disrespectful, we have to remember too that I touch on this a little bit in the entry video, if you all watch that. But we speak in different codes. God designed us differently. And one of the perfect examples he uses in the book actually is like when a woman says, I have nothing to wear. Technically we mean, I have nothing new. Where if a guy says, I have nothing to wear, he probably means I have nothing clean. So it's just little things like that, how different it can be. So a lot of the times things that trigger that crazy cycle may just be we're reading into things, or what I'm saying is coming across one way even though I didn't mean it that way. And we've ran into that too, where I've had to explain, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it this way.
Yeah, but it's also like we're not talking about major issues. I mean, that obviously happens too, but we're talking about dumb stuff, people.
Yeah.
Dumb things.
Dumb stuff.
Okay, I'll give you a couple examples. So, I do most of the grocery shopping runs. There's a couple things. I don't like to go with my wife because it takes 10 times longer, and then we got to bring the kids, and then it becomes an ordeal, and so we kind of fight about that because I don't like to go with her. So I end up going alone most of the time, which she doesn't like that because she wants to go.
I get distracted. I do admit it.
Yeah, she was supposed to go to Sam's Club for about 30 minutes today, and she came home 2.5 hours later. So I don't know what happened on this trip. I think there was a dollar store and some other stuff. But anyways, when I go grocery shopping, I have the list that she gives me, and inevitably I'm a dude, so I either can't find something, missed it, or I get the wrong thing because it wasn't specific enough for my dumb brain, or she thinks that I'm, smart enough to know what she meant. And so then, I go and do this thing that I think I'm doing, I'm taking time out of my day. I think I'm doing a good deed. I think I'm loving my wife by going in and serving her and getting the groceries. And then I get home, there's not a thank you. There's a, why'd you get this? Josh, what? I didn't say to get this. We already had this. There's multiple responses, right? And I take it. I respond a couple times. Even in that moment, you don't really realize that it's disrespectful because in my mind, as a man, it's like, yeah, I did this task for my wife. I'm being loving. And then now fast forward to 2 or 3 grocery shopping trips in a row where the same thing happens upon getting home. And guess what? Inevitably at some point, I break down and I'm like, screw you, I'm not shopping ever again, blah, blah, blah. And then guess what? I'm going to do whatever I want for the rest of the day. Screw her feelings. I'm going to go watch Netflix. I'm going to lay down. I'm going to go work in the wood shop. I'm going to do something. I don't want to be around her because I'm feeling disrespected. And it wasn't just that occurrence. It was the multiple times it built up. And again, dumb stuff. But it happens. And that's kind of how it happens, is dumb stuff like that. Another one, and this is just to give you examples, people, but it's like doing projects around the house. You'll admit this, but I think there's only been like 1 or 2, the dresser and maybe your desk, that you've liked or said something positive about when I finished. All the rest of them, it's nitpicking. It's, why'd you do that? How come this is this way? When are you going to finish this last little piece? Blah, 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 blah. It's not, hey, you did an awesome job. I'm grateful that you did this. It's why didn't you do this little part? And that's just her personality, or type A personality, that's going to drive her crazy if something's not exactly the way she envisioned it. But those are the dumb things we're talking about. This is the little slights of disrespect that before the book we didn't have the vocabulary, didn't consider it disrespectful, right? And then afterwards, we see it that way now.
Right. Well, not even knowing that you're stuck in the crazy cycle, not even knowing what it is. Like you said, those little things build up, and then your reactions acting unloving in response to my disrespect makes me, as a woman, think, okay, he doesn't love me at all. Not knowing that something as simple as reacting to him getting the wrong grocery instead of saying thank you, it does. It adds up, and if you're a person like me who tends to bottle stuff up, and after a while when that comes off, it can be an even bigger fight over, and they touch on this too, you may not even know what it's about just because it's built up for so long and you're reacting to each other that it's like any little thing then can trigger it. But it is real, it is happening, and and recognizing it, calling it out seems awkward at first, like, hey, we're on the crazy cycle, or I didn't mean it as disrespectful, or him telling me, hey, I didn't mean that unloving, or just saying I love you because he realizes that's what I needed to hear. It gets easier, and
then harder, and then easier, and then harder, and then easier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those things where the more you talk about it, the more that you recognize the signs of it, because that's the real thing, because there's so many things in a relationship that are unspoken that, the more that you talk about these things and talk about them in a softened heart kind of way, not a hard heart kind of way, because I can yell at her, you're disrespecting me, and that's not going to work.
That wouldn't go anywhere.
No, it wouldn't, but it's like, oh, all right, babe, that I don't think you see what you're doing, but it's not cool, like it's hurting me, and that's hard to do as a man, to say,
right,
you're hurting my feelings.
I've definitely dealt with the other side, with you stonewalling, leaving, even going to the office all night, whatever. It's, it can end up in an extreme fight if you don't nick it, in the butt to begin with.
Mm-hmm. Isn't it nip it in the bud, as in trimming, gardening?
I like butt better.
Nick it in the butt. So we're taking a little nick out of the butt. Okay. Interesting. She's a nurse. I don't know what she does at that hospital, but I don't really want to find out.
You don't listen to my stories anyways. They gross you out.
Yeah, they do gross me out. Nurses are crazy. Crazy cycle. So...
being unloving.
Yeah, being very unloving. And yes, my jokes will be unloving at some times, and she's got to point that out.
I do.
Yes, she does. but I mean, no joke in a lot of ways. And we can't give all the credit to Dr. Emmerson Eggerichs or whatever, because it's from the Bible, but he pointed it out in a way that makes a lot of sense. And it starts with, unfortunately for you wives out there, telling your husband that you respect him, that you appreciate everything that he does, and then just watch the wonders, right?
Well, and it's not to say the husband can't start it.
Yes.
It's just, it's much harder, especially if you don't realize that you need respect.
Well,
that's what you desperately want.
That's what I mean by the wife has to start it, because when the man tries to start it and you're just trying to be very loving, nothing really changes if she doesn't understand that she needs to respect you in return, because then it's just loving, and then she's continually disrespecting you. It's not going to fix it. So the wife really has to understand the respect side of it, and how to get her husband's attention and how much that actually means to him. And then just, again, watch what happens.
Right. I mean, showing the appreciation for what you do is a form of respect as well. And, it will end up being both sides. Marriage is 100% each side. You have to work at it together. Yes. You have to both fight for it. And love is not something that comes easy at times. I mean, we're all human, we're not perfect, and we're changing. So are we changing together? Are we still spending time, making time together? We have kids. Are we still making sure we're going on dates and remembering why we fell in love? And even something else that I think kind of helped too is love languages, just finding out, what speaks most to you. Like, from you, part of it is me serving you. For me, it's time. I like time together. I like doing stuff together.
All the time. Every moment of time.
I do not like being alone.
No, she hates it.
Depression's part of that. But finding that out helps too, because if I were buying you gifts all the time, you'd be like, why is she trying to buy my love? But some people, that's how they like to express love or receive love. So it's good to know those things. For me, I like serving you. That's part of me showing you love, and I enjoy doing it. Mm-hmm. And that's something you enjoy receiving. So it's like...
Well, and okay, so let's say that your husband is being unloving. I think how you approach that, or what's worked best for us and you approaching me, is starting with respecting and then telling him, what is causing her to feel unloved. So it'd be like, say I'm exhausted, right? And I've worked like 70, 80 hours in the week. If she just came to me as like, you're not spending any time with me, and, all you're doing is sleeping or, laying around, blah, blah, blah. And after this podcast, people are going to think I'm lazy, but that's not entirely the case. But anyways, if she came at it that way, it wouldn't result in anything. It would make me want to continue doing that, not caring. But she goes, if she came up to me and was like, Josh, you've worked so hard this week, and I know you're exhausted, but I'm feeling, a little lonely, and I miss you. Can we spend time together? Well, guess what? Like, she recognized how hard I worked. Like, of course I'm going to want to be like, thank you. And the way that I show thank you is hugging her and talking to her and hitting pause on Netflix or waking up from my nap. You know what I mean? So there's ways to approach it. And it's the same way for a man approaching a woman that's disrespecting him. And again, the word, it seems so triggering, in today's society, but it's once you learn what your actions are doing that are disrespectful, it's not really disrespecting, it's just kind of not recognizing what he thinks he's doing for the family or the relationship. Anyways, so there's definitely a good way and a correct way to approach when you're feeling unloved or when you're feeling disrespected. And that's with, care and kindness, and with that love that you have for each other and remembering that. Mm-hmm. And if you do that, you can break the crazy cycle anytime. Mm-hmm. Again, it's not going to stop it, because there are going to be things that you're not realizing that is disrespectful, or things that you don't realize are very unloving. And so that doesn't go away, because we're humans and we're sinful and we're selfish. And we want what we want, and we think things should be a certain way, and we're not always going to get that right, when we're together. So that's kind of how you approach, at least in our opinion. But this isn't just, the Bible says it, and therefore it's true. Again, this is the funny thing atheists don't like to admit to themselves, but so many things in the Bible that seem to be fantasy, or seem to just be, suggestions or folklore, or, whatever, end up having a lot of scientific backing behind it. So here, this is like, what chapter is this? I don't know. It's page 35 of the book. Interestingly enough, scientific research confirms that love and respect are the foundation of a successful marriage. Dr. John Gottman, professor in the Department of Psychology at the University of Washington, led a research team that spent 20 years studying 2,000 couples Did you hear that? 20 years studying 2,000 couples. That's a long time and a lot of people. That's 4,000 people over 20 years. That's a lot. 2,000 couples who had been married 20 to 40 years to the same partner. That's incredible in itself. These people came from diverse backgrounds and had widely differing occupations and lifestyles. But one thing was similar: the tone of their conversations. As these couples talked together, almost always there was what Gottman calls a strong undercurrent of two basic ingredients: love and respect. These are the direct opposite of and antidote for contempt, perhaps the most corrosive force in marriage. And it's true. It's absolutely true.
Right.
It's impossible for you to be respectful and to me be super unloving. And it's impossible for me to be to be very loving and you be super disrespectful. It can happen if you don't know the principles. But like, it beats contempt every time. Love and respect beats contempt. And we're just being truthful.
Right.
Completely honest. There are times when you do have contempt for your partner. You don't want it.
No.
But,
and when I'm being disrespectful, it comes across to you as I don't like you, or
yes,
and
you're a piece of crap.
That's
like not
literally
worth anything.
Yes, and that's literally how he thinks. And like I said, it makes me, with his unloving, feel unworthy, unwanted, all those things. So that's something to keep in mind, because I never want him to feel that way. I never want him to think
Correct.
I don't like him. I love him deeply, and if I didn't like him, we wouldn't be together. It's
So if I had like hate in my heart or something,
right.
You wouldn't want to be with me.
Yeah. Inside joke. Anyways, yes, and the things that made me fall in love with him, I know are there. So when we're fighting, that's something to think of too, with your partner, the person you're with, going to marry, or married to. Those aspects are there. You got to get to the core of what's causing it, because a lot of times it's nothing to even really be fighting about, and life's too short to be on a crazy cycle with you. Like, I'd much rather spend time respecting you and you loving me. And
it's a lot funner.
Yeah.
A lot hotter. Anyways, this is interesting, and I think as Christians we need to be more open about our marriages, and I don't mean in that kinky kind of Florida way where they're swingers. I mean,
oh gosh, you went there.
Yeah, I go bad places with my jokes. But anyways, no, what I mean truly is, why don't we talk to each other about what works and what doesn't? Why don't we open up about hard times? What if someone told us about this earlier? Would we have gone through the, year of not so great of a marriage? I feel like we wasted, time together where we could have had a much better relationship and a stronger relationship. And I think that's because we don't talk. And again, it's part of that, the whole reason the podcast started. It's one of the things you and I talked about. It's like we present our lives as being better than it really is, by not wanting to be open about our issues or
right.
those things. But if we can't rely on each other, then who can we rely on in this world with evil and sin? And it's sad, but we're talking about this book, and I'm sitting here wondering, I wonder if anyone out of all of our Christian friends have read this.
Right. Yeah. And why are we keeping up walls to where we're not talking about this stuff? We're all going through different things, and no one has a perfect marriage either. I don't care who you are. We all have ups and downs. That's natural. That's part of life. We all have different struggles, and those outside struggles are going to affect your inside life. Whether it's finances or, just multiple things happening, like the washing machine breaking down, or, And then, the dishwasher leaking. Who knows? And it usually happens that way, where it's not just one thing, it's several. And, if you're not prepared for those things, you're gonna take it out on the person you love the most. And that only hurts you, because him and I are one. I've always viewed it that way. When we entered into that covenant with God, we are one. So when I hurt him, I'm essentially hurting myself. And it's true, because when I react disrespectful, then he's unloving me. So it counters back. And
I never thought of it in that aspect, but you're right. It's also coincides with the message from church like 2 or 3 weeks ago, when he was talking about, sin is really like the consequences of sin. The punishment of sin is really our own punishment. So like sin will cause the punishment. Like God doesn't have to do that for us. Like he just has to step aside and let your choices, your wrong choices, affect your life negatively.
Right.
And that's the same thing in marriage. When you are one and you start sinning against, that marriage, that relationship in an unloving way or disrespectful way, you're only hurting yourself. And therefore your sin and your choice is causing the punishment in itself. And, that's the crazy thing. Like, we don't ever want to hurt each other, but we do it all the time. And that sucks. Well, how do you fix that? I'm not sure. But for us, God laid it out in the Bible in Ephesians 5, and it's pretty clear, and it worked for us. It still works for us. It works better for us when we remember it. But it's something that I truly recommend to any of you out there to try. Just give it a shot.
Right.
Give it a shot.
Battle, because most books, most messages they focus on just the love side, and that wasn't working. In my mind, I was trying to love you more and more and more, but that's not what you needed. So yes, please, if you can, give it a try. It truly helped us, and that's what God commanded, and obviously for a very good reason. And it only strengthens us as one and each other.
Yeah, and again, don't forget, we are designed different as men and women, no matter what society is trying to say. Women are nurturers, men are, want to go out and provide and conquer and beat the world, but we, want a cheerleader in a way. And when we feel like someone's got our back and that we can be open and honest with that person and them respect us even when we make mistakes and be there for us, then we just want to protect and love and nourish and be in a relationship with that person. It's natural. It comes naturally because of the way that we were designed.
And that's not to say, women don't deserve respect and empowered to do things like that we've done over the years, vote and stuff. But yes, I truly agree. We are designed different.
You went back to the 1920s, huh?
Oh yeah, those were my type of feminists.
Vote.
I'm serious though.
No, I agree. Empowerment for sure.
Right, being equal in those senses makes sense to me. And but yes, not to get off topic. We're not going to get off topic with that. But we are designed different, and for good reasons. And it's important to remember that, because, like right there, we speak differently sometimes. And
well, and again, let's go back to the beginning too. It's really hard to respect someone and their decisions if your expectations for them are wrong and different.
Right.
So setting that foundation of expectations of what you expect from your spouse, your partner, needs to be there, because then, if they are misaligned, then there's no way you can respect that person for some of the decisions they make, because you're always going to think they're wrong in those decisions too. You know what I mean?
Right.
So there's a lot to this formula. But for those of you that are married, I would, again, for the last time, call you to respect your husband. Husbands, love your wives. Enjoy it and break that crazy cycle. I appreciate all of you out there. Please like the posts, share them, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Instagram, Facebook, all those good things. I am out, and she is out, and now I am going to make out with my wife.